Okie doke, so we're back with part 2 of the Selenium WebDriver tutorial, and we were just about to have a look at how to run a Sauce Labs text off of, or Sauce Labs test, sorry, off of your local host. And they cut the lights, but I was going to cleverly switch that to my screen input, but didn't get enough time, so let's try this again. Alright, now y'all should be able to switch that off. And let me just check that one more time. Oops, all my windows are coming up. Okay, good. Yeah, we're still live. All right, cool. So get that down. Get that down. My God, all this stuff is coming up. So yes, as I was saying last time, and let me see if I can get the slides back up to. Slides went where? Are these the slides here? Yes, these are the slides here. So, of course, make sure that you're running a server on localhost before you try to run a Selenium WebDriver test off your localhost. Naturally, this is what my localhost looked like. Just pulled it up for you guys over on the VirtualBox. And so another thing you need to take care of is tweak the code to accommodate whatever text you have on the screen of your localhost web server. So let me open up the localwd.pl file here, and once again, pretty much the same stuff. So let's go ahead and run that test after I do a brief description of it. So in this case, now our test is going to be called Perl WebDriver bindings in Selenium to test a local server. And this time we'll actually hit up, well, I guess we can either hit up the remote one, or we can even hit up a local one eventually. So in any event, we'll start up the Selenium remote driver on the host as specified up above, port 80. And again, we'll use Firefox 37 in Windows. And the extra capabilities will be as described. As far as the name is going to be the same name we just talked about up there. So we'll use the Selenium driver object to get HTTP localhost. And if it can do that, and then it failed to load localhost in Sauce On Demand, we're going to skip over all the stuff we called out earlier to try to set the status of the test. And then we're going to fetch the element h1. And of course, h1 is the tag name of the element. That's the big thing up here that says it works just a bit. So if we don't get it works, then we fail to see the expected page because we're missing elements. Or if the text of it works, based on the getText argument, does not equal it works just a bit, and we'll see how this actually works later. Hopefully this one will actually do what I want as far as checking the text. Then it'll say fail to see the expected page because of incorrect text. And that's really all there is to it. Much shorter test than last time, not spend half an hour describing it to you. So without any further ado, let's get that one up. So localwd.pl. Let's take a look at how that one looks. So for this, we'll go into the sauce this. And see, it's running. Let's take a look at it full screen and see what it's doing. Uh-oh. Whoops. To test against localhost and other locations behind your firewall, you'll need to use Sauce Connect. It's simple and secure. See saucelabs.com/connect to get started. Haha, fool you! Can't just do it straight up like that. So like they were saying on the webpage, you do need Sauce Connect. And because it's unlikely that your local host is actually exposed to the real world in any sense of the imagination. So of course Sauce's VMs can't just go on and get to it. You got to pipe that into Sauce's VM somehow. And so they wrote a program for that Sauce Connect. And this is a command line tool that you can run in any environment, Mac, Windows, or Linux. It starts the Selenium WebDriver, and it makes the tunnel for you, so you don't have to fumble around with exposing your precious local host to all the little hackers and doodads and people who might try to steal all the intellectual property from your super magical killer web app that you're trying to write. Or especially for me, who works at a big company don't have to poke holes in your corporate firewall. So another beauty of SOS Connect is that multiple sub-accounts can share a tunnel. So this is an interesting concept. So when you sign up for an account with SOS Labs, there might actually be a whole company that signs up for one single account, and then the account administrator can actually make sub-accounts underneath that one account, so that the sub-accounts do not have access to see each other's test results or to run interactive sessions in particular. So that's useful because if I'm on the team of people doing home loans, for instance, then I really don't care about the tests that people writing the auto loans websites are trying to do, and vice versa. So that's where the sub-accounts really helps take care of that stuff, that I don't see any results I don't want to, but yet I can still share the same tunnel resource that everybody else throughout the whole company is using. I don't have to run it on my own device. So, like I was just saying, one or very few machines in the enterprise actually need to run SOS Connect when you're using the parent tunnel. So let's start the SOS Connect right now and see how the fate changes for our test. At a minimum, it's very simple. You run SC -U for your username, -K for your API key. So, back in our VirtualBox window, we have our SOS SOS Connect is in here. SC 438 Linux bin SC-U SOS user-K SOS key. You shall never know my API credentials. All right, and with that, you'll see a bunch of output on the screen. It's very verbose in telling you what it's doing. Please wait for you may start your tests. So the interesting part that comes up is when it says Selenium listener started on port 4445. So now you have your very own Selenium WebDriver instance running off your machine, localhost, at port 4445. So now, thanks to SOS Connect, everything that happens to the browser and happens to that Selenium WebDriver now gets piped into the VM so that you can see what it's doing. SOS Connect is now up, and you may start your test. So now at that, let us put that in the background, and let's try our test again with local WD, and let me fire up this again and clear out the old result and get ready to show you the new one that comes up. Okay, cool. Now, running view full screen. Obviously, it's not doing much, so it's gonna not take a long time to run. And voila, it shows it works just a bit. This is the default web page for the server, and blah blah blah, all that kind of good stuff. Although it looks like, in my case, it's still managed to freak out on finding the exact element that I wanted it to. What is all this gobbledygook that it printed off here? I think it must have been part of the error message, perhaps. So, yeah, so as printing the content of it works, and it was supposed to find the element h1 tag name. Good question as to why that broke. No idea what I did earlier to break any of this kind of finding text on the page stuff, but in any event, there's the gist of how to get an internal page off your corporate network or your own local host through into SOS Labs. Now, there are other settings that you can use for getting SOS Connect permissions to go through the firewall, as well as getting the regular SOS Labs stuff to go through your firewall as well, because you can set those parameters in the Selenium remote driver in this one, and you can read that more in the documentation up here. And you can also set that in the SOS Connect binary, and you can read more about that by poking around in the reference for SOS Connect. For instance, proxy configuration, where you use proxy PAC and proxy tunnel. So it's pretty darn simple. I've got details about how to do this that exist up on my blog. I think I've got links to my blog that you can find from the slideshow presentation But again, like I said earlier, that's going to be primarily geared towards JavaScript rather than Perl. So that's okay though. With this having been successfully done, at least to the extent that it would let me, let's take a look at the next things you can do with Sauce Labs. So, of course, it's a great standalone application. You can run all these Selenium tests with it, do all this browser automation for testing. But hey, there's other exciting things that partner with Sauce Labs that allow you to do really incredible stuff that's not just simply grepping for text off a page and making sure that it tells you the exact price of the suit sent and all that kind of stuff like that. So, for one, you can actually test mobile apps using Appium, which utilizes a Selenium WebDriver to run tests on Android and iOS applications. Now, what other test frameworks can you think of that allows you to use the same code for testing all these native platforms? So you can take a native Android in Java, or you can take a native iOS using Objective-C or Swift, and you can actually use WebDriver code to go in and muck with both applications on both platforms. So let's actually talk about this a little bit. So to get an Appium test running, it's pretty darn simple. The first thing you need to do is to actually upload an APK file, or the iOS equivalent of the APK file, to Sauce Labs temporary storage. The APK file is essentially the executable file that represents the Android application. So, of course, that's a thing you need to give Sauce Labs so that Appium can run the test. So for that, we need to take a look at the calls you would make for upload file. And that would be like this. So what you'll see here is you write saucelabs.com recipe1 storage, your username, and then test file name with underscores in between, question mark. Then you can put overwrite equals true or overwrite equals false. I guess it'll give you an error if it was already there and you put false. And then data binary is @ path to your file name. And this is your local path to it. And this is the file name that you want it to be saved as later on. So, oops, wrong thing. Let's clear this junk off. And maybe I can show you back up in my scroll bag buffer where I did this for real. Yeah. This is where I could use that yodeling music for the Cliffhangers game as it goes up the... you know what? I think I'm on the wrong one. Okay, so here's a real live example where I was trying to upload SpeechPipeScribe.apk. It's a application that I made, and so this is the remote path to it. It's just going to be called that in my directory, and since I happen to cd into the directory where it lives in my Linux box, then that's the local path to it. Pretty darn straightforward. So with that having been done, you can see that that file does in fact exist on my Sauce Labs temporary storage. So let's take a look at the Appium code. It's very similar to the code you would write for a web test. Although in this case, all I did was go a little bit differently with Selenium Remote Driver. Instead of it being new in the front, it's now the object arrow new from caps, parentheses, and then you hand it a bunch of hash parameters, such as remote server address as the host, and in this case you use the host at ondemand.saucelabs.com for sure. Port is 80, and instead of having extra capabilities and a whole bunch of other jazz for browser and host and version and all that stuff, you use desired capabilities with flags such as the name of the test, which will be pretty much the same as the others except to test an Android app. Yay! The Appium version, you can pick different Appium versions to use. I think it goes even higher than 1.2.2 now. This is the path to my APK file. And this is essentially like saying HTTP:. It's like the protocol. It tells it that you need to look on the sauce storage and the temporary storage to find this APK file. And we want to test it on Android version 4.4. We definitely don't want to do it on a browser, but we want to do it on an Android emulator, and the device type, as opposed to being a tablet, will be a phone. So, once all this stuff is said and done, you can go through and do stuff like driver find element, and you can find by ID something called button 1. And this would actually be on the LED Goes application. And so if I go back here to GitHub, to BrightBlocks, Android bin, actually, let's see, I wanted res, layout, and we were poking around with the message activity. So the message activity has something on it called button 1, and you'll find that down here. And this is the whole layout for the front screen of my Android app for the LED Goes BrightBlocks hardware product. This is actually doing communication to send messages to the scrolling LED matrix. And we have the button very generically called button 1 as its ID. And it is simply the button you use to try to hook up to the Bluetooth. So, as such, search by ID for button 1. Then, once you hit that button 1 to search for Bluetooth devices, you would then go on to wait for that page to appear, wait for the new activity to appear that'll actually show you the list of Bluetooth devices and give you the opportunity to scan for new ones. Now for that, we want to wait for the button scan object to appear, and that's its ID on the new Android activity that launches up. So we got that from going into, not this one, but where was it at? So to find that, I looked at the string that the button contained. It was supposed to contain scan for devices. So the tag that this button will be going by is called button scan. So the text of the button is not hard-coded into the button itself. It's actually a resource that's a string. And this is good for doing things like nationalizing your program so that it can run multiple languages without having to do a bunch of hard coding of different resources. You can just say, hey, load this language file, or load that language file, and it'll automatically put the correct localized string in there for you. So, to find out where that button scan exists in the code, let's actually paste that up in here and search. And yeah, sure enough, it's in device list as ID of button scan. So that's how you can find that button. Then, let's run a test to, first off, make sure that it did find the button, and secondly, to make sure that the button text is in fact called scan for devices, just as specified by that string resource. And if it's not, then we check exit and we fail. So after that, we're through running the test. So let's get on with seeing some of this stuff. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to, actually, you know what, I'm going to continue trying this and see how it goes. Let me undo my undos. Alright, cool. So, let's go back to this guy and do, not in the sauce directory, but in sauce labs toot epium. Now, let's get this set up so I can just go right away and watch it. Okay, cool. So let's do that. Let's also, now that we're getting there, we can expand this and things really, there we go. Let's see if we can do that. Test an Android app. Let's run it view full screen quick. Load some live video footage. Now there it is, loading up the Android emulator inside of a Sauce Labs VM. And
that's so awesome.
mm-hmm.
Does it say the battery is empty?
Yeah, the battery is empty on the VM. I mean on the emulator.
Plug it in.
Luckily it will never die. Now, unfortunately, for some reason, it takes a really long time to install an application on here. Obviously, you can see there was quite a while before it came up, and then unfortunately, SpeechByteScribe stopped. So I tried several applications of my own to put in through the Appium tool, and unfortunately, they all die right at the very beginning with exceptions. And so I guess what I need to do is open up some kind of ADV log so I can see exactly what's happening and make sure that's fixed in my application. Because when I run it on my own phone, guess what it doesn't do? It doesn't do that. So anyway, let's go on. And at least you saw that it had the potential to load the APK file onto the emulator in a VM environment. In fact, it did. It just failed to actually execute beyond some of the initialization code. So with a little bit more tweaking, we can, in fact, easily run Android or iOS test in the cloud through Sauce Labs without having to get your hands on any hardware whatsoever. So that's cool. And then I do have to give a shout out to Applitools Eyes, which is another interesting little cloud-based feature that has a subscription-based feature rather that does comparisons of your website's user interface to various mockups you might have, and these mockups can be, in PDF form or they can be pictures. So you can actually set it to do the first run of your website, the first comparison, and you actually have it just load the picture of the website in the browser instead of the actual website. So it stores that into its memory as this is our baseline. So the next time you run the test, you point it to your actual browser, and so it picks up on your actual code, compares it to the baseline, and it tells you all the differences that exist between those two versions. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting is that when you look into this stuff really closely, different browsers actually do anti-aliasing on text in different ways. So if you're going to do a pixel-by-pixel comparison of a website with a mock-up or a website in Firefox versus the same website in Chrome, you're actually going to find numerous little tiny one-pixel errors all over the screen. It's going to totally mess up your results. Luckily, Applitools has come up with some interesting intellectual property around solving these problems to reduce the noise, only tell you about salient differences that exist. And you can actually set different granularity levels. Like, for instance, if you're testing the Yahoo front page on day-to-day, or you're testing CNN.com, it'll actually just tell you about differences in blocks on the screen as opposed to pointing out differences in specific content that exists. Although you can actually have it drill down and tell you about differences in text as well between one or the other. So if you want to run a test constantly to see if you got a new message in Gmail, then you can actually have it run a test on Gmail and make sure the screen looks exactly the same way, and if it ever changes, then you know you got a new message. It's kind of an expensive way to do that test, but it's there for you if you want. The only drawback with Applitools for our crowd is that unfortunately it does not support Perl. Because Applitools is something that needs to be coded certain libraries for the different languages that it wants to support. They haven't gotten around to doing Perl yet. Of course, they got Python, they got Ruby, and all that other kind of jazz, JavaScript, Java, and .NET, and all that stuff. But maybe in the future they'll have it. Anyway, you guys are all champions. Thanks for spending your night with me, or at least part of it, and coming out here to hear about Sauce Labs and Selenium and automated testing in the cloud. Keep learning more through me. I'm here as a resource, or you can always go online and look at the documentation, post on forums, Stack Overflow, all that kind of good stuff is available for you, and thank you so much once again. And this is who I am.
Thank you, Steve-O.
All right, thank you. No, I think I only cut the screen sharing. If you turn the lights on, I could wave goodbye to everybody on the camera.
Okay.
Bye.